very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
Now we need a sense of global responsibility. Think 6 billion humanity equal.
Sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great.
Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping.
It is time that we all perceive gender on a spectrum instead of two sets of opposing ideals.
We must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force.
Within the sound of silence.
But in order to talk freely of those things, you have to release yourself of those pains.
You see, love liberates. It doesn't bind. Love says, I love you. I love you if you're in China. I love you if you're across town. I love you if you're in Harlem. I love you.
If you hit a talib with your shoe, then there would be no difference between you and that talib. You must not treat others that much with cruelty and that much harshly. You must fight others, but through peace and through dialogue and through education. Then I said, I'll tell him how important education is and that I even want education for your children as well. And I'll tell him, that's what I want to tell you. Now do what you want.
And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more.
You can be that great a generation.
I said that why shall I wait for someone else? Why shall I be looking to the government, to the army, that they would help us? Why don't I raise my voice? Why don't we speak up for our
One
rights?
day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
You know what's right. Just do right. You don't really have to ask anybody. The truth is, right may not be expedient. It may not be profitable, but it will satisfy your soul.
Of course, the task will not be easy, but not to do this would be a crime against humanity.
All that is needed for the forces of evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing.
Think about my granddad's lap. Think often about that night. About how some people are waiting for people like us to slide our hands against their walls and say, close your eyes. I'm going to turn on a light.
Welcome to the Forum on CHRW. My name is David Seston. In ancient Rome, the Forum stood as a place where all were able to come out and discuss matters of public interest and concern, and they were able to do so in a free and open environment. Recently, at Western University and other universities around the world, students do not feel that they are able to speak their minds or ask the questions about subjects that concern them. They feel they will be judged by their friends, their peers, and their seniors because they question what's being told to them and whether what they're being told is right or wrong. We cannot have a free and just society where people are afraid to ask the questions and are afraid to speak up. This forum is a project aiming to open dialogue on these subjects that concern students. It is a place where students can talk to other students while trying to get an idea on the concepts that are floating around them without knowing why it's there. There won't be any professors or academics lecturing. This forum will be the student's voice. Because if you hear us talk about it, then maybe it's okay for you to talk about it with your friends and your classmates. The forum will focus on the what, the why, and the how. What the issue is, why it has become an issue, and how it affects Western students specifically and university students in general. What we're talking about today is racism. But more importantly, this episode is about the conversation. I've known Yoav since I started here at Western, and he is one of the people that I have come to call friend. At the university, at CHRW, and personally, he is somebody that I trust. We have had a few conversations about the nature of racism, the concepts behind musical sampling versus theft, and a myriad of other topics. So when it came down to talking to somebody, he was somebody that I trusted to do it right. Why this is an issue is pretty obvious. With what's happening at U.S. universities, the incident at Western on March 1st, and with the Western White Student Union still up and running, these issues are omnipresent in our lives. How this affects Western students is at the heart of today's episode. While we frame the conversation around the Western White Student Union, it is actually the conversation that is important. Here you have two people sitting down and discussing the issues. We don't always agree or even come at it from the same point of view. Half the time it's a fight to even get us to agree about the same terminology. But what is important is that we are having the conversation and we are having it civilly and we respect each other. And at the end of the day, that is what is most important. I want to take a moment and say a few things about this conversation. First and foremost, neither Yoav nor I speak for anyone or any group other than ourselves. Our opinions are our own. Secondly, for most of this conversation, I end up playing the devil's advocate, particularly when it comes to the high intellectual concept of absolute fairness and equality. In this case, I am arguing on the side of something that I don't believe in to speak about something that should be intellectually true. While I say it in the conversation, I just want it to be clear. Neither I nor Yoav support the White Student Union movement in any way, shape, or form, particularly the version that's here at Western. And now I'm going to turn to Yoav so we can start this conversation. So you're listening to the Forum on CHRW, and I'm joined today with Yoav. And today's an interesting day. This started from the fact that we were having a conversation after the episode about what happened on campus and Palestinian versus Israel and that sort of stuff. And we're just sitting outside and we're having a conversation. Now, I've sat down and I've had this conversation with people multiple times, particularly my wife. My poor wife has to sit down and deal with this sort of stuff. But it sort of struck me that, this is the kind of conversation that just needs to happen. So I figured let's bring Yoav back and him and I will hash out this conversation and we'll go from there. So I guess the first thing to say is neither of us are experts on this. I mean, my area is anthropology and your area is...
consumer behavior.
Okay, so maybe a little bit of an expert on this. But we're both interested and at least knowledgeable. But again, so the idea with the forum is people having this conversation. They don't need to be experts. We just need to ask the questions. So, thanks for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me, especially again.
And I guess we'll start into one of the things that's been bothering me for a while. And it bothers me on a whole bunch of different levels. But it will be the Western White Student Union.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to go there first. So I'm going to ask, before I sort of launch into where I feel about this and stuff like this, what is your opinion on it?
What is my opinion on the Western White Students Union? Ooh, okay, that's a pretty broad question, but let me see what I can do. While the Western White Students Union was obviously a joke, I can see. It was meant. Well, it wasn't meant as well. It was a way. I personally felt as if it was an opportunity to rile up, conversation. Maybe uncivil conversation, maybe civil conversation, just like this. While it technically met all standards for on paper for what a club is, the nature of the club itself and the approach that they took really made it so that it was not a club that was required, nor was it a club that was really respectful to the other organizations and clubs on campus that are there to support minorities and to support people who need to be who or at least feel a need to be part of an organized group, especially ones that are there to educate and to celebrate other cultures while in Canada.
So the argument starts becoming in that how to put this, because it's such a hard one, in that I agree with you 100%. There is absolutely no need for it. However, when this happened, and particularly as I'm reading up more on it, so there were also a bunch of posters and stuff put up around Toronto universities for white student unions in regards there, and they were actual attempts to get them started. And again, while I don't think this is necessary, the other side response from it seemed to be a little disproportionate. if you take a look at the posters, it was just a couple of white guys, and it said Ryerson White Student Union, and linked to a website. And people started saying that this was making them feel unsafe on campus, that, oh my God, like this isn't home anymore, and things like that. And I start to wonder why that reaction happened to something that, for all intents and purposes, at least in my opinion, there is no logical reason why it shouldn't be allowed.
Okay.
Well, seriously, okay. If the playing field is equal, and we're not talking about specifically education on minorities or minority issues, but as a club for people of like-minded. So if you look at, there's no set definition of what a student union or student association is, other than a group of people coming together of like-minded issues to sit and collaborate. Mm-hmm. So by that definition, by the idea that other ethnocentric groups, other religious groups have the ability to come together and form this, there should be no logical reason as to why a white student union shouldn't exist.
Okay. I see your point. I feel, however, that your point follows the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law in terms of what a club is for, what a student organization is for. So while, yes, clubs on paper say it's simply for like-minded people and like-minded ideas and anybody can start a club, the point of club systems, the point of being able to start these organizations, is to be able to bring people together who otherwise may not necessarily have resources or the any sort of cultural affiliation in the place that they're in, and an opportunity to educate the large populace about a smaller populace, because the larger populace is by definition very unlikely to know about this much about the smaller populace, I think that's all I have to say about that at the moment.
Until I put my foot in it more.
I'd love to hear what your idea is.
Well,
in that case,
see, if we're going through the education, about stuff like that, then it really quickly becomes an easy conversation about how many people really know. Now, you can argue that we live in a white society, that people live in the society. However, people of European descent, how many people actually truly know the history therein? Most Canadians know British history because that's what we're taught. Unfortunately, most Canadians know a lot more American history, or a version of American history.
Okay.
But Germanic history, certainly Roman influence history, the Nordic areas, Baltic states, that sort of stuff. I know surface amounts of that sort of thing. So if we're going to talk about purely an educational system, then somebody could argue that the need for that education does need to be there as well.
Well, in that case, I would agree that definitely there needs to be there's definitely opportunity for education amongst European cultures, but not necessarily European culture in itself. I feel as if we want to learn about Germanic tribes, we want to learn about Romans, we want to learn about early formation of early Italy, Spain, etc. There is a Polish club, there are Russian clubs, there are Italian clubs, there are German clubs. I feel as if those, because of the nature of the European-based society that we live in here in Canada, where it's was conquered by the Vikings, the French, the British, and of course has a lot of influence from the U.S. as well. To base a club on European. I'm not sure how exactly someone would someone would base a club on overarching European European culture and the facets of it, when largely a lot of European countries share a lot of those ideals, and but other than that, I mean, a lot of the education is more likely to come from the specific countries themselves, which I'm like in favor of. But then again, I mean, like based on our general systems of like democracy or laws and things like democracy laws, and just general social culture as well, is so not. I personally feel as if it's so not distinct amongst those European countries that there isn't much added education as you would. That you would be able to get more in depth from individual country clubs. I feel as if, which definitely have their own merit in terms of teaching us about Italian culture or German culture.
So the argument there has to be, and because I'm playing devil's advocate right now.
Yeah, please do.
We'll go into sort of what I feel should happen afterwards, but to say that there is a specific African club here at Western. There is a Korean specific club, but there's also an Asian club and a black club. So the argument of the individual ethno-specifics, country specific clubs exist, but that there is also one for the overarching culture as well, or unifying group, continental group. I'm not sure where to word that one, but there is a black club, there is a Muslim club, there is an Asian club. Why can there not be a white club?
I see your point, and I understand. Like totally, I guess you have kind of caught me on the way that I said that I want it to be country specific in terms of the European style as well. The clubs such as the Canadian Asian International Students Association, the Black Students Association, the Muslim Students Association, and this is just me speaking personally. I'm not sure about how they specifically say it, but I feel as if it's meant to be for people who are of a particular. Well, first off, there is like definitely a culture of those people inside of Canada. There is a community of those people inside of Canada. People who are, first-year immigrants, second-year immigrants, people who have been here for a long time, as well, who have, whose roots trace very far back into Canada as well, where they have specific experiences. I do believe that I think that black people have an experience. There is a black experience in Canada. There is a black experience in the United States, and not only does it change from country to country, it changes all over the world. So the Black Students Association is there for, I guess, the celebration of black culture in Canada and the U.S. as well as they have done some stuff that features stuff all around the world as well, including similar to like the African Students Association. Same thing with the Muslim Students Association. The Muslim community here in Canada is very different from the Muslim community, let's say in Iran or Malaysia.
Yeah.
So I feel as if they are a very distinct minority community, and that there's an opportunity there for students to be able to get together and talk about issues that aren't usually talked about in society, and of course as well like proper representation and advocacy.
But at the same time, there is a shared sort of white experience.
I kind of see what you mean by that. Like technically there is like a shared white experience, but at the same time, the shared white experience is a majority experience, and it's an experience that's that while being in Canada, is pushed on people in Canada while they're in Canada. So, Asian students, black students, and students from other countries who are coming into Canada, who are assimilating to Canadian culture, and I joked a little bit that you could say that, you know, up till like I guess like I can't say like up till very recently, I would have said that the White People Association would have been the government of Canada.
Yeah, I, in no way, shape, or form can I argue that statement. Yeah. And I would say up until fairly recently, Canada's always been nice and proud of its multiculturalism, but yeah, even the last government we had, we really can't argue that too terribly much. No, and here's the thing, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I feel that part of the conversation breaks down, and where part of the conversation we're having breaks down is logically, from a logical standpoint, from a rules standpoint, which, you know, the rules are society, that's what we live in. There should be no problem with a white student union. From face value, there should be no problem with it.
From the specific definition, if you were to take a definition of like a university club system and made it, you know, gave it to the United Nations and say, hey, can you ratify this for student unions all across the world? I might agree with you.
Yeah.
However, and
it's the however we're going to get into in a second.
Yeah. However, like, you know, there are loads of things in which, you know, loads of things in which you can manipulate the letter of the law to not be the spirit of the law, to not act in the spirit of the law.
But not even completely letter of the law. Spirit of equality. Everything being equal. Everybody should have the equal opportunity and chance to form something.
Something that has something that I would say has meaningful, significant, and currently and culturally relevant purpose.
Culturally relevant. Oh,
right,
okay.
and culturally or country specific relevant. Well, I guess in that case, culturally relevant purpose. What sort of
the problem is,
and also, I'll let you go.
Particularly in the United States, we are starting to see exclusion based on race, not just in one way. Yeah, I know. Okay. I see the look on your face, and it bothers me to be on. As far as I'm concerned, we should never have gotten to this point. The fact that there is actually some sort of demonstratable ideology that people are sitting here going like, I'm being excluded, I'm white, and I'm being excluded on the, I'm trying to help support, I'm being excluded purely on the way that I look, to allow that these, if you had have asked me a year ago, I would have laughed at you at the suggestion of the formation of this. But from an intellectual point of view, there is demonstrable problems that have allowed this to form.
Okay.
So, and the idea is that from everything being equal standpoint, it should be okay.
Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying, but I see what you're saying using like some examples from the U.S. And that's
and I pretty
and I mean like
never
those
comes up here.
What's that?
I hope it never makes it to Canada.
So like and like as do I. And I mean like as for any club that I might be in, as an Asian, as a Jew, I wouldn't hope that any of any cultural club would exclude any sort of cultural club or community-based club would exclude somebody for because of their race, especially when they're there to discuss and learn and partake and potentially even support. However, I see what you're saying about how recently people have been excluded from some, particular clubs, and you brought up some examples earlier. The issue that I see with that, and while I see why you can say like, oh, in that case, there should be an advocacy group for advocacy. Well, there should be a group in which they should be in for it. let me ask you, like, how long have those people been excluded for? How long would you say? How long would you say?
I'm going to reserve that conversation for after this.
For after this, okay.
Because
all right.
that heads into a very dangerous area very, very quickly.
Okay.
Let's talk about that one after the break.
Okay, sounds good.
But let's just stick to, if everything is equality, flat across the board, intellectually, there should be the ability to create a white student club. Yay or nay? You can say no. It's okay.
Okay, so now maybe I might be a little bit confused by what you mean by intellectually, because I'm thinking of this from like an advocacy point of view. And
no, it doesn't have to be an advocacy group. Yeah. It's just, if one group has the ability to do this, another group should. There should be no bias based on the way that you look, or where you come from, or what your religion is, or what your sex is, what your sexuality is, what your gender identity is. The playing field intellectually. So the idea that, the high moral concept is that, intellectually speaking, everybody should have the equal opportunity to create a club.
Everyone should have an equal opportunity to create a club for a if they have a discernible purpose. I feel as if, and
again, from the letter of the law,
from the letter of the law, like, anybody can start a club, but the club should have a purpose to it, and needs to be able to enhance the student experience.
So you're saying that the people who would participate in this club would not have their student experience enhanced by it?
Yes, I would disagree. I feel as if a formation of such a club would do more harm to race relations and to people on campus than good.
But now we're getting into what I was going to talk about in a second, which is why we can't have nice things. But intellectually speaking, all things being equal, the potentiality for it to exist should exist.
Yeah, and I think I know where you might be going with this. The potentiality of it should exist in a world in which everybody is treated equally. In a world in which everyone is treated equally, sure. Sure, let's do it. However, in this day and age, people are not being treated equally.
And here's where the problem comes with it. See, that is the single biggest hurdle, because that is the single argument being used by these groups to allow for their existence, is that everything being equal, this should happen. And the problem is, nobody's getting to the point that we just got, in that, yes, you're 100% right.
Yep.
Intellectually speaking, yeah, sure, no problem. However, historically speaking, today speaking, whenever you get a bunch of like-minded, and I hate saying this, but white people, the second they start getting together, somebody thinks that it's a really good idea to put on some white robes and do some really horrible things.
Yeah.
And this is why we can't have nice things. So to go back to it, why shouldn't this exist? And I'm going to let you speak on that before I throw it into it.
Why shouldn't this exist? It shouldn't exist because I feel as if it's not helping anybody. It's not helping anyone as they need it. It's not helping I feel as if overall it doesn't help. Especially in Canada, it doesn't help it doesn't really have much help for the larger populace, and I feel as if there may not be as much help in the smaller populace in itself.
I think it could be argued that there would be some help in any way, shape, or form. The second you get a network of people together to help each other, to even converse, there is a demonstrable benefit. However, one of your earlier points was this does more harm than good. And 100% I agree with you. if one of the first things that the Western White Student Union, we'll bring it very specifically, the Western White Student Union did was post the name, address, and class schedule of the president of the Black Student Union as one of their very first things that they did. Mm-hmm. The heck were they thinking? Yeah. Like, they're like, well, it's not overly threatening. Of course that's overly threatening.
Yeah, they sent out, they invaded people's privacy. Yeah. They made threats, or at least insinuations of threats. And
that's sort of the biggest problem I've been having with it is there were no overt threats. Mm-hmm. However, just like there is theoretically no overt racism on the site, which is still bloody well up. I can't tell you how much that bothers me that this thing still exists. Mm-hmm. They did an update.
Wait, you didn't think there was any overt racism there?
On its surface, there was no racism. The second you actually read anything that they put...
So you mean the second that you actually think about anything that they do? Yeah, okay.
Well, that's just it. And here's where the problem starts coming in. They post something and you're like...
Waterboarding sounds like so much fun if you don't know what it actually means.
Wasn't on there? Did I miss that one?
No.
No. Okay. And here we go. Okay, so that is we're going to come back to this in a minute. That is the time for this half. Give us about a minute and we'll be back.
My name is Josephine. I'm going to second year medical science and you're listening to 94.9 CHRW.